I'm Suzanne Murdoch, MD and co-founder of the Hub Newry, and welcome to Series 4 of the Powering Productivity podcast. Each episode, I explore the stories and insights of SME co-working and flexible workspace operators from around the globe, focusing particularly on regional and neighbourhood spaces and the communities that they drive forward. I chat around the inclusivity, genuine connections, clarity and purpose, and positive impacts that they bring. So let's get started. Welcome back to you. And for those who are new to joining the podcast, you're very welcome. So today I'm with Benjamin Carew, Director of Othership, leading the floworking revolution and championing freedom to work from anywhere by bringing workplaces and workspace software to a world where flexible working and collaboration work hand in hand. So Ben's story has moved from working within engineering into flexible working, both with co-working operators such as Packham Levels, implementing workspace software, as well as working with more hybrid flexible working businesses rolling out workplace scheduling and collaboration software. So Ben, I'm really looking forward to hearing all about how this has evolved, and particularly how it's accessible to smaller operators co-working on hybrid businesses of all different shapes and sizes. So if you would, Ben, for those who haven't listened to you or seen your story before, give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do, please.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. And yeah, as you said, I'm one of the directors here at Othership, and actually, I'm one of the co-founders from the organisation as well. Uh, my background that brought me here was very different. I came from like an engineering background for many years before moving actually into management consulting, and then eventually setting up my own business to drive towards a more positive change and make work life better for everyone. And we started off by looking at how we can support people with remote and hybrid and flexible working. And yeah, that's how I got here today.
How did you get into the more flexible working? What was it that propelled you from engineering into that area of business? Was there anything in particular?
Yeah, so there's been a number of like trigger points, I guess, over the way. So, firstly, when I was an engineer, I predominantly contracted as a freelancer, and I quite often had to commute to the sites where I was going to. And as a Londoner, you can imagine most automotive engineering facilities where I was working were not based in London, so I had to commute outside of London, 1 or 2 hours each way, like every single day. And generally, then I was sitting down and emailing people or video calling people all over the world. And it started to sort of niggle at me a little bit that, under my contractor requirements or rights, that maybe I shouldn't have to be here every day. That niggle sat and burnt with me for a number of years. And then when I went into management consulting, I was actually working quite closely with automotive companies on digitization processes, both from like an operation side, but also from their business model. So not just making cars, but e-bikes, scooters, ride-hailing services, and new businesses around new commuting styles or modes of transport. And looking at a lot of transport data, we saw that people were working more and more flexibly. It wasn't necessarily talked about in the office, but at a certain level within a company, people were started to get permission from their managers to be able to pick up kids or look after kids or run a business on 1 day a week, and starting these more flexible transitions. So really like my desire for that future state, and then seeing that the world was starting to shift towards it, and this was all pre-COVID, I thought, oh, maybe there's a real opportunity here to do something very meaningful for people, and be an early mover, and that will allow to actually sort of have a substantial tone of voice and position as an organization in the future.
Oh, so you were one of the pioneers of flexible working.
I definitely think we were one of the pioneers of flexible working, and especially what we would call back then hyperflex. So traditionally, a lot of the co-working spaces didn't have day passes. There weren't that many in anywhere really. There were a few around London, one or two in other major cities in the UK, and that was about it. And you had to take a monthly membership, and quite often at some of the more well-known brands, not to drop any names, they were charging more than you could rent a studio for in London, for example. And we said that's not really flexible working. And yeah, so I think we were definitely one of the first movers of what we called hyperflex, and making day passes for people and hourly passes, and looking at how companies could bring their underutilized real estate to market, and benefit from that as a flexible workspace.
Interesting. So how did Othership evolve? And tell me more about the memberships and how the businesses, I guess, developed in line with what your members are asking for, were asking for at the time.
Yeah, definitely. So back when we started in sort of 2018, the most underserved sort of community of people were freelancers and founders who were looking for really affordable workspace. They didn't want to pay the monthly subscriptions that came from general co-working spaces, but they did want to escape the house, have collaboration, have people to share a win with, have someone to go for drinks with after work or do some social activity, and not just be so isolated and have some of the benefits that you get from colleagues, but without the cost, as you can imagine. So the first thing that we ever did was serve this community, and we bought free workspaces from hospitality venues to the market as bookable workspaces. And then we started adding in co-working spaces and putting in day passes and hourly passes, so it was more accessible than a monthly membership. And then at some point we realized, oh, okay, a lot of these people who were starting as freelancers and maybe start in a free workspace actually at some point progress to maybe wanting a more permanent base, or they've grown their business and they want a more permanent office. So then we added in a traditional brokerage to help people find the best flexible workspaces, whether that's an office or a co-working day pass. And then suddenly COVID kicked in. Uh, what we were doing at the time had seemed like insanity to most people, if I'm completely honest. It was definitely a select group of people who really saw value in what we were doing, and they were freelancers, founders, and occasionally high net worth, actually, who were moving around a lot as well, which was useful from an investment route. For us in the early days. But when COVID happened, everyone just went, oh, wow, this is incredibly obvious what they're doing. And instead of trying to partner with us or work with us, a lot of people copied us. It was very flattering in one way, it was very frustrating in another way. And it meant that we had to innovate our product roadmap that we'd had on this sort of 10, 15-year plan a lot faster. And what that meant was starting to build enterprise grade products to support hybrid and remote working. And that looks more like desk booking software, meeting room booking software, visitor management software, tying that to our network of workspaces. And then meaning as well that these offices could, if they wanted to, take their underutilized space and advertise it on our platform and run it as a co-working space and have some area as office for staff booking and some for co-working. And that meant we also built a co-working space platform within it. And really we became, as you can see, quite a complex set of integrated services around flexible working.
That's interesting. So it's actually quite holistic. So it's not just for co-working operators, it's for potentially freelancers, member businesses. There's a whole variety of memberships and users within that can avail of the services.
Exactly. Everyone from like a student or a freelancer in their first few weeks or months of freelancing to early stage startups using free workspaces in cafes and hotels, all the way up to the likes of massive global banks who are managing what their staff are doing and how they're using the office space, as well as taking their empty space like a Santander work cafe and marketing through our platform to those free workers. So it is completely holistic in that sense all the way around.
And how do members use that? Is there essentially a location, like you've got a map of the location you want and then drop down of the specific criteria that you're looking for?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So just like people are used to using a booking.com or an Airbnb, that platform is effectively a marketplace. The way that we do things is all about accessibility for everybody. So we never charge more than going direct. In fact, we often charge less than going direct. And half of the spaces on the platform are free to use as hospitality locations.
So how are you finding, I guess, it's an increasingly competitive market out there for tech, the software companies at the moment in this market. How are you finding things? How do you niche, I guess? How do you niche down your product to appeal to different users?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question on this side. It is a highly competitive market out there. And the thing that we've done differently to everybody else effectively is One, we really drive accessibility. So having this network of high quality free workspaces that people can use. And often they're more popular in many ways than some of the paid co-working spaces in terms of the volume of people who are going through them. Uh, and that's very unique to the market. We're also the only people who are really tackling B2C and B2B at the same time.
Mm.
And it means that our whole architecture for the platform is very different to everybody else's. It starts with an end user. So anyone who's used something like a GitHub, you join as a user, you create your organization, you can have multiple organizations within it. And we provide this free version to connect like freelancers and founders to each other anywhere, just like we do for the offices. And by having this freemium model and a B2C and B2B split, we get more users, more customers, more data, more product feedback than anybody else. And it means that we can learn a lot faster. Our UX UI is miles better than anyone else. From anyone who knows, if you've ever used sort of enterprise grade SaaS software, generally it feels pretty clunky, pretty old, and it doesn't feel like your latest consumer app like a TikTok or something. Because we bridge that B2C and B2B, ours does feel like a TikTok. It does feel like a very modern, intuitive, easy to use software. And that helps adoption and collaboration and reduces churn and therefore more data. And again, it's like very synchronous and harmonious in that sense.
Yeah, I get the fact that it seems to be very community driven. You seem to listen to what the members are wanting, which is really key in such a fast evolving industry. And then that's very quickly reflected in what you're doing and brought up to speed. So there doesn't seem to be much of a time lag in terms of how the industry is evolving and what's required, the whole demand supply thing.
Yeah, I think we've been very good at being incredibly responsive on this. We work alongside our customers every day. We take both our enterprise and our individual members' feedback incredibly seriously and drive the product with releases almost every day on our software. We're always adding new locations based off customer feedback and customer reviews, and it's a huge part of our success. At the end of the day, people don't book a desk, whether it's in an office or a co-working space or go out to a hospitality venue, generally for the desk. It's this sort of misnomer that there's all these people who are stuck at home working off kitchen tables uncomfortably or whatever. And it's just not like this anymore. Like, people are very comfortable at home. You leave the home to spend time with other people. So it has to be driven around people first. And the secondary function is the desk.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. And another question, I guess, from an SME operator, co-working operator perspective is they're often very tight budgets. Um, it's quite a lonely place as an operator sometimes because things are moving so fast and you have to juggle so much. And yes, of course, you're listening to your members and what they're looking for, how the industry is evolving. But it's, as an SME or neighborhood micro workspace operator, how do you find the right software? How do you where do you start? How do you know you're using the best one for you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's something that I guess we take quite seriously from the sales perspective when our account executives are out speaking to operators about what they're doing and what they're looking to use for. So first, just fully understanding your own requirements for your size, I think, is really important, and not necessarily jumping into the first most comprehensive enterprise solution that gets presented to you. Quite often, you can probably run at the beginning of a Google Sheet or a Google Form or Wix website or a WordPress website. You can do something a lot more simple than taking a full enterprise account. And then actually, quite often on these enterprise accounts and solutions, you can get stuck in them because migration can be quite hard out
Oh yes, I
from some
remember
of them.
that well.
Yeah, this is something we've learned to bring back to our user feedback. Like, that's how we really specialize for co-working operators. For example, we built dedicated migration tools to help get people off the likes of Office R&D and Yardi and Nextdoor. So when people are complaining and stuck, but they're like, oh, but we can't move, it's going to take us months. No, we have special migration tools, a bit like Kraken, who I love from Octopus Energy. And we will give you a white glove handover. We'll get you moved in a couple of weeks. We'll integrate it to all your new systems, and we provide custom development and things. So that's a nice way to deal with this. But yeah, when people are looking at their solution and what they want to procure, understanding something that's appropriate for your size, and take a trial. Like as someone who sat there and watched a million demos, it's very easy to run a good demo. When you know where to click and what to do, it's simple. Get a trial, start running it, see how it actually works with some dummy data. I know it takes longer to make the decision, but it can be a very costly decision, and you can get really stuck once it's your full CRM is in there, all your products are in there. You've got a big problem.
Yeah, and it can be quite overwhelming as well if you've got tech people talking to you in tech talk, essentially a completely different language. You often get just carried away with what they're saying. So yeah, that'll be a simple answer. And I think you do need to take that time and step back and test things. I'm saying this all from hindsight, you know.
I'm sure you're not alone, and it's hard. Like there are a lot of solutions out there. Maybe even going and finding other operators who are running the solutions and having a play around with them if you can't make a trial account everywhere. I do think the due diligence is worth it on this case. It's obviously not as high as a cost as the rent or the lease or whatever is on the space, but I imagine it is one of the higher costs that most spaces incur. And if you provide something substandard, you can have real problems that we've seen with people not being able to sell direct to consumer on their own websites, and you lose, we estimate, way over 90% of site traffic if you can't do D2C sales for like a day pass on your own website, and you're being jumped out into some portal somewhere else. So if you're losing 90% of your leads who are coming in as warm traffic and want to make an inquiry or want to do that first booking to test the space out, you've got a big problem. And simultaneously, if you provide your actual members a really poor software to be able to use in the space that isn't facilitating utilization, collaboration, supporting events and activities like this, then you're going to build frustration in them as well, and they just may be more likely to churn. And so I think there is a high cost beyond just the license fee that you're paying that people maybe don't always think about.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think the whole focus is very much about membership, productivity, fulfillment. And if you feel something efficient like that, then that's really going to free up the operator's time to build those relationships. And it comes back to that human versus tech balance as well. You know, having that time to build relations and do the things that are important to your members.
Exactly, and a really good platform from our view, and that's why we're collaboration first. It should do some of the lifting for you on this side. Like, why should it not be firing notifications just like a social media platform on who to connect with in the space? Like, it's slightly unrealistic to assume that every operator is going to have hosts who are doing that constantly. They do have jobs to do. Like, let the platform do some of the lifting for you.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point.
Mm.
Tell me more about the hybrid solutions that you offer for businesses, be it whether they're in a co-working space or standalone office themselves.
Yeah, so the solution breakdown, I guess, from us is always to every customer. That's part of the for everyone piece. So for a hybrid organization, effectively they can get access to an on-demand network. And even if they have a hub within a space, they might want actually to get national or international access as well. And being able to do that for as low as like £30 for a year, it's a bit of a no-brainer. On top of this, so you can see like that makes a lot of sense. Then for them to actually come in and say, okay, we would like to use Othership as a broker. We don't charge a fee to the person making the inquiry for the brokerage. That does go out to the co-working spaces in that like traditional model, but it can help them find the best space to be working from. And then I guess the next step up is to look at the workspace software solutions. So that's the scheduler. So that's showing who's working from where. That's sending those notifications. There's a new joiner in your team. They're in the space this week. Do you want to come and use the space and join them for the day? Your favorites are in. Your team are in, and we even have small teams of sort of 8 or 10 people who are using this within a co-working space within their own office without the operator providing it to them. We even have a free version of this for our freelancers and founders who can connect from everywhere. Small businesses or larger businesses can come put their events on those platforms and be like, hey, we're running this event from this co-working space this week, and invite our community to come and join them. So there's so many different ways that the platform can be used in that sense.
Oh, I love that. I wasn't even aware that a lot of those facilities were even an option.
Yeah, this is the biggest problem we have as we've built more and more and more into these deeply integrated solutions, because we're trying to make a universe for flexible working solutions that integrate to each other. You asked about the USPs, and I think from the real enterprise level, that is one. You don't have to go off and solve 5 different problems with 5 different solutions. You can solve it with one provider, one set of integrated solutions, just like a Google Workspace or a Amazon Workspace.
Fantastic. And then a big question, tell me more about the concept flow working.
Flow working originated from when we first started the business, and we talked about how we're combining the benefits of flexible working. And flexible working is not just hybrid working in that sense. Yeah, it can be the number of days a week. It can be about your hours. It can be your location. There's so many things that encompass flexible working. And what we do at Othership is encompass flexible working with co-working. This is what we're doing. We're allowing people who work flexibly to co-work, to collaborate, to spend time with the people that they want to, where they want to enable them to do their job better, enjoy the work that they're doing better, and have a better work life.
That's great. Who coined the term flow working?
I actually don't know. I would love to claim credit for it,
We'll
but
give you credit. We'll give you
yeah.
credit for that. That's brilliant. And then the Portfolio Collective, you've a partnership with them as well.
Yeah, we do. It was actually Nicola Twiston Davis, who was a member of Portfolio Collective and of Othership at the time, who suggested, I believe, to myself that I reach out to them and that they could be a very interesting community to partner with. They're promoting a lot around people with portfolio careers, which has a large overlap with our audience. They were running some online networking events as well. And at the time, we were struggling at Othership with how to do our shift from being only a B2C business up to a B2B, an enterprise. And we had to stop hosting events in London so we could make them more accessible and host all over the world. And so we used partnerships and our members to be able to do this. And Portfolio Collective run an incredible online networking event once a month. So we partnered with them to do this as well. And actually, they were the first real testers of a theory we had around making groups on Othership. So we'd say, okay, you can join a group of special interest. So you can imagine across our community, there may be an interest group in AI. For a company or an organization using Othership in like a private environment, they may have a special interest group for diversity, equity, and inclusion, for example. That we would make these groups, and then we made groups for TPC, and they put all their members into this group, and then their members started asking us, "Oh, with this group, it would be really nice to see where the other members in the group are working from this week, so that we can go and join them." And that was our first real validation that this concept of not just using a workspace because there's a space to work from, but I'm using the workspace because of the other people in the space came about. So a big thanks in that sense to Portfolio Collective to helping us drive that part of a roadmap about 4 or 5 years ago nowadays, and is a core part of our product, as I said, to really facilitate joining other people, sharing where you are, spending time together, wherever that is.
And the whole concept of a portfolio career, which actually I hadn't heard of really until I'd researched a bit into you there a couple of weeks back, and it kind of dawned on me, is this an increasing concept now? There's more and more people who have, say, 2 or 3 jobs and different projects that they're involved with, as opposed to one lifetime role, which used to be the case 20 years ago. Do you think that's primarily because of the whole accessibility of flexible working now?
Do I think a portfolio career is more? No, I guess I don't necessarily in that sense, because actually I had quite a portfolio career that wasn't necessarily driven around flexible working. So from my own experience, it wasn't like this. I've done automotive engineering, subsea oil and gas engineering, management consulting with data center migrations that I knew nothing about at the beginning. So I think it's just how we are as people a little bit
Mm.
more, that we quite often want this change. And actually, maybe people were previously, yes, we maybe spent 20 years with the same company, but I imagine there were a lot of people who maybe moved around those companies or
Yeah.
got promoted into management positions. And in that sense, you are picking up numerous different skills. And you may have been an engineer who then went into quality assurance, who then became a project manager and then a manager and a chief engineer. And does that make sense? And
Yeah, it
that
does.
actually
Yeah, it
also
does
has a
actually. Yeah.
portfolio of skill sets. So
And I guess the advent of the likes of social media and everything is a lot more transparent now. We are seeing other opportunities out there, whereas perhaps we didn't 20 years ago.
yes,
Probably a
yeah,
multitude of things, I would have thought.
that is probably very true. I had never thought about just the visibility of available jobs and other things that people are doing and applying online. And yeah,
And
almost
opportunities for
definitely,
collaborations and different projects.
absolutely, yeah.
Very interesting. So what next for Benjamin and Othership?
Yeah, it's a very timely question. I guess we're sitting on a bit of a pivot point with the organization, not necessarily a pivot point in terms of our like products and solutions, but how fast we grow at the moment. I guess for anyone listening, what I'm talking about is like different. We're going through a financing round as Othership and looking at different mechanisms of how we're going to finance the next stage of growth. And depending on the answer to that, will decide how fast we will go into the various areas. Um, the bits of the roadmap we're really interested in doing, a lot of our locations are currently in the UK. We have from the marketplace side, so booking on demand or finding an office. Um, a lot of the spaces are in the UK. We have some across Europe, some across the US as well, but we're looking to expand that network quite quickly. Back in 2017, 18, as I said, there weren't that many co-working spaces. Almost none of them had a day pass. And to work with a space for that marketplace side of the business, we generally had to go in to the space, like walk around and go in and build a really strong relationship and explain what we were doing, and talk them through pricing strategies and everything. And so it was quite slow to add a space. Over the years, there are now huge databases and you can ingest like 10,000 locations overnight. Um, and so we're getting ready to sort of pull the trigger to do that. We've not done it at Othership because we're much more focused on the people using the spaces before the number of spaces. But I think we're at a point where we've shown we can really launch in a new city and drive like several thousand bookings into new locations very quickly. So it now makes sense to start ingesting them and dealing with some of the challenges of languages and currency conversions and accounting systems and things internationally. So that's one of the things that we'll definitely do. Um, We've been launching for about a year and a half now the ability for co-working spaces to sell direct to consumer off their own websites. Without jumping into any sort of portal or anything like that, we've now released the second version of doing this. And we will keep on driving that forward and make it so you can have a little more customization on how the widget looks and the custom emails and bits and pieces like this. And I think we'll have the next release live by end of Feb, mid-March, something like this. So that's a big change for co-working
Give
spaces.
me an example of what you could do with that, what sort of things you can sell.
Well, at the moment, let's say you want to go and sell a day pass on your website. Until about 6 months ago, almost none of the co-working space software providers enabled that without logging out into a separate portal. And quite often on those portals, if someone had used another co-working space before or anything, it's just an absolute nightmare to understand how to book a day pass with these huge drop-offs that we were talking about. I say 90%, but actually our data suggests 98% of people were dropping off on these funnels, which is basically everybody. And we started communicating and built the first versions of being able to sell directly. The nice thing was we often drive innovation in the market. So it led to some of the other co-working space providers catching up in doing this. My understanding is they're doing it through some additional paid tiers, and some of them are still a bit shaky and things like this. But yeah, we allow you to go direct to consumer on your own website in that sense, and have it fully integrated to your software, co-working space management
Yeah,
software.
that's a
Uh,
massive thing.
and your CRM as well. So you don't have to put the CRM in there. We always suggest HubSpot generally, and HubSpot free actually does a lot. So for most providers, I'd say that's enough, but you can connect to Pipedrive or wherever you want your CRM and things. So yeah, that's one big innovation. And then AI into the platform. So some of the bits I've done in my background, and something we always plan for Othership was around this. We're not going to do dynamic pricing yet. I know that's something coming in the market. It's something that I've done a lot of in the past for petrol companies, actually.
Tell me a bit
Um,
more about what that is.
so by knowing how busy the space is, by knowing what's going on in the area and the average pricing, by knowing how many people are searching and search intent across platform, we can suggest to operators to either automatically let us change the price or to change the price themselves. And do models on, okay, you'll get this much more incremental revenue if you change the price by this much, or put in an offer of unlimited coffee or whatever. So that's definitely coming to the market very, very quickly, I would imagine, at the moment. And I think that's one of the advantages of having a very large proprietary data set, which we do for many years. And one of the advantages of our free workspace network as well, we build a higher data set than anyone else, as I alluded to earlier. The bit for us that's really interesting is the notifications on who to work with. That's always been the bit that's very interesting. It's why we took the approach of B2C and B2B, so that we can get this feedback, better UX, UI, and a bigger data set, so that we have proprietary data for AI algorithms on marriage algorithms, dating algorithms, saying, hey, Suzanne, we suggest that you should go and work from here this day because you're going to meet this person. Do you want to join them? We very much like the idea that at some point you will never even need to log into Othership. You will just see your notification in the appropriate place and say, yes, I will join this and this and this on this day, or you will ask where to be and get your suggestions. But yeah, we like nudge, not sludge. And then there's some other bits, but I realized I probably said a little bit too much already on some of our bits that we're doing going forwards. But yeah, we've got some really interesting things around floor plans and other bits and pieces. And this is, we're moving into our AI era for us at Othership. We always planned it on the 10-year roadmap. We call it Othership AI. That is the bit that powers in the background. And yeah, we really need to deliver that in earnest, because I think within the next 3 to 5 years, if it's not within your platform will be redundant to the market.
Yeah. What a great story. I have learned a lot of stuff through that conversation. And I think there's so many opportunities in this area with the AI and the dynamic pricing, which I didn't really understand before. I'd heard of, but I didn't really get. That's a fantastic opportunity. But no, thank you so much. Where can people learn a bit more about Othership and what you're up to?
The best place is to go to othership.com. I strongly suggest to everyone to click on the solutions bit in the menu and then read down the list, and you'll see which ones are fit for you and which ones are not in that sense. There is a live chat on our website. It's something we've always wanted to do to support customers as much as possible. If you've got questions, just ask. You will get a real human will come back to you within working hours, European working hours, and answer the questions. And if they think that you're better off speaking to one of our account execs, then they'll recommend to hop on a call with someone, and they can demo through or set you up a trial account and see how everything works.
Ben, thank you so much for your time. Really interesting, and good luck with everything that you're up to.
Oh, thank you so much, Suzanne. Really appreciate it.
Speak to you soon. Don't forget that all the episodes and links are out there on our website, thehubnewry.com. While you're there, you can stay tuned in with what we're up to by joining our newsletter and subscribing to Powering Productivity on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for being here. Powering Productivity is presented by me, Suzanne Murdoch, and produced by Emily Crosby Media.